Welcome to NIL Edge, the show where the people shaping the future of name, image, and likeness talk about how they're doing it, what's working, and how they're looking to improve NIL offerings for student athletes. If you're inside an athletic department, a brand trying to navigate smarter athlete-first partnerships, a student athlete, or even the parent of a student athlete, this is the space for you. Each episode, we talk to NIL directors, brand leaders, and other innovators pushing the NIL conversation forward. Our goal is to share success stories, equip you with ideas, and create a trusted space for NIL strategy, education, and alignment. The show is produced in partnership with NIL Newsstand and Digital Sport by Hot Paper Lantern. I'm your host, Sterling Randle. I come from the world of strategic communications and public relations. Before that, I worked in collegiate athletic departments as an SID. I've seen firsthand how critical communications, compliance, and brand building shape collegiate athletics. Now I work for brands and organizations at the intersection of sports and strategy. I help them navigate, change, protect their reputations, and connect them with athletes and fans in meaningful ways. Today, we're joined by Logan Hittle of Ohio State. Without further ado, let's do it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we'd like to welcome our very special guest, Logan Hittle from Ohio State. He serves as the Associate Athletic Director of NIL and Strategic Initiatives at Ohio State, where he has helped oversee more than 5,000 NIL deals across 36 sports, and he leads the university's efforts to equip student athletes with the education, resources, and partnerships they need to build impactful brands on both local and a national level. Logan, how the heck are you?
I'm great. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and excited for the conversation.
Us too. First, to just kind of jump into it, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the NIL space and how you got into the position where you are right now with Ohio State.
Yeah, really unique journey to this point. I'm originally from Zanesville, Ohio. I grew up about an hour outside of Columbus, so grew up a Buckeye, came to Ohio State in 2016 to be a mechanical engineering major and pursue that in my undergrad, which you can probably decide with this conversation is not the route that I ended up, but everything happens for a reason. So in my undergrad, I switched to sport industry. I had the opportunity to become a facility assistant at the Woody Hayes Athletic Complex, basically a janitor. And with that opportunity, I made some connections and had the ability to walk on and play 2 years at Ohio State. So got my undergrad, had the brilliant opportunity to play under Coach Obermeyer and Coach Ryan Day. But really that sparked my interest in working in sport for a career. And so not only did I gain incredible experience being a student athlete at Ohio State and met so many incredible people, but I really found a passion for working in college athletics. So graduated in 2019, went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, to be a graduate assistant in academics with their football program. It was during COVID. So spent about almost a year down there, and Ohio State called and brought me back to work in their Eugene D. Smith Leadership Institute, which is our student athlete development department in 2021. So I was working on student athletes, helping them develop life skills, prepare for life after sport within the athletic department. And then, this wonderful thing of NIL kind of took the world by storm. And I was just really in the right place at the right time. I tell a lot of young professionals that reach out, how did I get into where I'm at? I was in the right place at the right time and really allowed myself to add value in different places. So moved into a director of NIL role and have continued to grow and evolve as the space has evolved here at Ohio State, which I'm super fortunate to do.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. While you're working with student athletes, having been a student athlete yourself,
yeah,
do you see a lot of yourself in the student athletes that you work with?
Yeah, I do. I think I probably have one of the more unique perspectives, right, to be in the role I am because I was a walk-on student athlete that wasn't on scholarship, and I think sometimes that provides a unique perspective. I think I was a hustler, I was a grinder, and I think that my mindset even then and now helps me provide a unique perspective to student athletes that this space is work, right? And it's the ability for student athletes to be able to monetize, and it takes them going out and really building their brand and chasing opportunities. So Yeah, I think I do see myself. I think everyone has a unique perspective on what NIL is and what it looks like, and everyone's journey is a little bit different. But that's what makes being a place like Ohio State with 36 sports and 1,000 student athletes special. Is you get to meet a lot of different student athletes where they are, and the journey is very unique for every individual athlete.
So that's a great segue into kind of the next question that I wanted to ask. While I was doing some research, I think it was in the Ohio State alumni magazine. I read an article that they wrote about you and kind of what you do, and it was like, here's a peek behind the curtain with the NIL here at Ohio State. In the intro, I mentioned how many deals that Ohio State has done, and obviously you just mentioned all the student athletes that Ohio State has. What are the core components that you guys put into producing this much volume while also creating quality partnerships for student athletes and for brands?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate, and I think we don't probably provide enough insight on this, but our coaches recruit at a high level, and I think that we always should start with that. I don't think we give them enough credit in this space, especially to our success. And you talk about numbers and statistics and our volume, but it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the character of student athletes we have here. And we're fortunate to be at a place at Ohio State that competes athletically at a high level, the highest level, and has a great academic institution. And once again, our priority is to develop lifelong leaders on and off the field. And so it starts there. It starts with who do we bring into the program, and really, our coaches make my job somewhat easy. The student athletes are marketable all in their own way, and I think once again, everybody has a unique story. I just told mine a little bit, right? And I think I always use that as an example with student athletes that if NIL was around when I was a student athlete, like I would have went to a trash company, right, and told my story, and whether it was waste management or whatever it was. But it's silly and quirky, but like those are the stories and the authentic brand building that allow for some of the most marketable opportunities on the student athlete and the brand side. So, to kind of answer your question specifically, we're fortunate to be in a corporate market that has a lot of brands that want to engage with Ohio State. But once again, the quality of student athlete we have, the education that we've provided on, it's just like you and I. Every conversation is an interview, right? Regardless of where we're at in our career, and everyone's creating a first impression, and really, the student athletes are doing the same in NIL. Brands talk to each other. Columbus is a big city, but it's kind of a small town, so if one brand has a bad experience engaging with you or your representation or somebody, that's going to become a narrative and a reputation. So making sure that they understand how to navigate those situations, and making sure that the brands have a great experience, so that way we can continue to execute with these brands and different student athletes year in and year out to get to the volume that we have.
Okay, we're on the same wavelength, because you just everything that you just mentioned is going to go through like the next 5 questions that I want to ask. But okay, so let's go first to the student athletes, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about the coaching staff. The coaching staffs for the different sports are recruiting a specific athlete. With Ohio State's profile, we can confidently say that these are high performance athletes, right? They're athletes that have probably already built a brand. So when it comes to maybe some other schools, they're a little bit further ahead when it comes to building their own brand. But what process do you guys go through with them when they step foot on campus? And can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a fair assumption, maybe not. I think everyone, regardless of your talent on and off the field, everybody wants to engage in this space a little bit differently. And I think brand means something differently to everyone. And I think, some student athletes have a large social following because of their recruiting process, and maybe some are good content creators. And so I think once again, you've heard me say it, and you'll continue to hear me say, like, we have to meet our student athletes where they are, no different than academics and nutrition and sports psych. That's how we kind of view NIL here. So for us, it's, I always like to tell our student athletes when they're on campus is, you have to understand, like, you, right? Like, what do you stand for? What are your core values? What are your morals? What are, who do you associate yourself with? What brands do you want to align with? And ultimately, like, that's all creating your brand. And, when people think of you, like, what's the first word that comes to mind, right? Like, your brand is your reputation. And so it's our job, to help them think about those things. Ultimately, they're going to create their brand. and then we're going to amplify it, right? I think that that's kind of the key point is we're not necessarily creating the brand for them, but we're going to give them a platform to elevate and amplify it once it's been kind of identified. So, yeah, it looks different across the board. Like I said, some student athletes come in at different phases of their interest level. Some gain interest when they get here and kind of see the opportunities that are presented. But that's the fun part of the gig.
Okay, so then the second part of what you mentioned of like Columbus being, big city, small town, with Ohio State and kind of the reputation that precedes it with its size, tradition, and profile, how does that complicate working with brands on a local and a national level?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that it complicates it. I would say that it's great because there's a lot of opportunity. I think, whether it's local, regional, national, our team and our staff and our department does a great job of educating. I think that that's something that early on in NIL, we tried to do a really good job of is, we talk a lot about education with student athletes, but how are we educating the community?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we tried to take a really early stance of helping businesses, helping alumni, fans, donors, whatever it may be, understand how they can engage and what NIL really means and what it looks like. Once again, we're fortunate because there's a lot of businesses here locally.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to do a lot of things that can be kind of rinse and repeat regardless of the brand or the industry or, the category that the company falls in. Because our job is to make sure that, somebody sees that and says, oh, I want to do that. Or, why aren't we doing that as a business to really get the wheels turning? So I wouldn't say it's necessarily super complicated with the amount of businesses we have engaged. It just provides, I think, a lot more opportunity because you get to sit down at the table with different people. It kind of makes the light bulb go off for us sometimes of, hey, we didn't think about this or we didn't think about that. But ultimately, we're lucky to have a great footprint here, once again, in Columbus, but also nationally. And the brand of Ohio State carries a lot of weight. And like I said, it's great to be able to allow our student athletes to stand on the shoulders of a brand that's, really tenured and really has a lot of tradition behind it. And once again, we don't want them to have to recreate the wheel. We want them to be able to use and elevate and amplify what Ohio State's already done before they even got here.
Yeah, that's a really good point in not putting extra pressure on the student athletes just because they are at Ohio State. You mentioned like it's establishing that expectation with local brands and things like that. Is that who's having that conversation? Is that you? Are you going out? Is it the MMR that you guys work with, the MMR company that you guys work with? Who's having those conversations with the brands to kind of set the table for them?
Yeah, it's myself. We have a great relationship with our Learfield staff here at Ohio State. Like you mentioned, our multimedia rights team. We just launched recently a Buckeye Sports Group internal sort of agency post house case with them, and so they have a team that they're building out of a sales staff and an activation staff that try to be a turnkey solution for sponsors or non-sponsors in the NIL space to engage. So. We have a team that we're, trying to catch up and build out and really have enough bandwidth to continue to service the highest level, 36 sports and 1,000 student athletes, which I think we've done a great job to this point. But we have to continue to grow to do that. And so, it's a combined effort. It takes a village. You'll hear me say that too a lot in this space. We're fortunate to have compliance department that leans in now on the NIL Go side of the world, post house case, and the trademark and licensing staff that, is helping with the merchandise and royalties and, making sure that all of our IP standards are withheld. So it really does take a team in this space to make sure that, we have an infrastructure to support our athletes at the highest level.
What new opportunities, sorry, let me ask that question in a different way. Obviously, before NIL was introduced, you have those core local brands that are supporting the university, right? Whether it be like a car dealership, a local dentist, an insurance company. You have those stalwarts, right? That are always associated with the university. When NIL was introduced, were there local brands that not came out of the woodwork, but hadn't previously worked with a university that were like, ooh, we want to try something different with Ohio State now that we can specifically work directly with student athletes?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I said, that's why one of the benefits of having a lot of volume just with number of businesses. But once again, I think a lot of people realize that they can engage in a different way. We always have to remind people that the narrative was always, brands, donors, companies don't associate with student athletes prior to NIL. And so then when you flip the script and the narrative, you have to educate, like, this is okay, this is permissible, this is how you do it, this is the creativity. And I think, still even 4.5 years in at this point, you hop on calls with businesses and brands that maybe do talent marketing all the time, but when you mention student athlete or college athlete, everyone kind of gets like a little paralyzed, and they're like, well, how do we do that? It's like, ultimately you're doing it now, right? It's just that the talent happens to be a collegiate student athlete. So this is, really similar to what you're doing already. So, yeah, it brought some new brands to the market. We've been fortunate to bring some new folks in, and I think once again, it's partially due to our streamlined efforts and the way that we can make it turnkey, and the way that the student athletes once again present themselves, and the ROI that we're able to provide and track here at Ohio State. And once again, you don't want to be in a local market that is a big city but a small town feel, and see your competitor engaging, with a student athlete and being the face of their storefront, and then you not be in the game as well, knowing that it supports the student athlete, it supports the university, and it also kind of does what you have to do anyway to market your business.
So you kind of mentioned this previously, but what kind of qualities and values do you look for when pairing up your student athletes with brands that have come to you to make sure that they and the athlete get the most ROI with the deal that they get with working together?
Yeah, I think when it comes to like brand values, we don't ever want to put a student athlete in a situation that, 5 to 10 years down the road, they're going to say, man, this made sense at the time, but this, looking back, this isn't something that really aligned with me or who I am. So, once again, it goes back to that point of, it's not us to decide that for the athlete. However, it's our duty to kind of educate them and make sure they understand, this is what this brand is. This is how it shows up in the environment. This is, the history of the company. But ultimately, we hope that they have a team around them that also can support them and guide them through those decisions. But, we want brands that are passionate about Ohio State. They don't have to be, ultimately, right? Like, we're not going to turn a brand away just because they don't have a large presence in Columbus or Ohio. But that's helpful. And I think ultimately, we want people that want to utilize our student athletes to really further and enhance, the business that they're trying to represent. So that can look a lot of different ways. It can have a lot of different qualities, but ultimately, we've been fortunate to have a lot of engagements and meet a lot of different folks across a lot of different platforms and companies that have been so incredible to work with and really support our athletes here. So it looks a lot of different ways. I know I've said that a lot, but this is a space that really does stay fluid and is variable depending on the situation.
I think that's the NIL space that is probably a double-edged sword. That is its greatest strength and its weakness, that it looks different everywhere, right? That just what works for you guys isn't necessarily going to work somewhere else, but it maybe bits and pieces can work somewhere else. One thing that you mentioned that I want to ask you more about, when you have these conversations with athletes, who's having that conversation? Is it a one-on-one sit down with you? Is it a team? Is it a group like you, compliance, marketing, the coaching staffs? What do kind of those meetings look like?
To no surprise, it varies. You should have known that was coming. I think, we try to do beginning of the semester education with our support teams, right? So compliance, NIL, student athlete development, nutrition, at the beginning of every semester to meet every team and the new student athletes and kind of give updates. Then we obviously have the ability to do one-on-one individual meetings. We learned early on that blanket education was maybe not the best approach, right? Large seminars to say, hey, you're going to come and learn about this. We don't make anything mandatory, but we took that approach to try to wrap our arms around as many student athletes as possible. But we kind of learned that, just like student athletes, businesses and donors, that we had learned, it's hard to blanket educate because everyone's at a different phase of their understanding. And so, to do a tax seminar, one student athlete may be earning just gift in kind product. Another one may be earning $100,000. And to think that, a 30-minute tax education session is going to help either of them get to where they need to be was probably a naive thought on our end. So have had to really kind of revamp what that looks like and re-strategize and restructure once again, how we're meeting each individual student athlete. And that may be one-on-one meetings. Obviously, once again, we don't have the bandwidth to knock out 1,000 of those a semester, but student athletes will make you aware when they need and what they need. And so as they come to us, we figure out the best approach to knock out what it is that they need to be successful.
When you do have brands that come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, we want to we want an Ohio State football player, right? It's like football, football, football. And then you talk to them and then you realize hey, your guys' money might be better well spent and you might get a better return on your investment if you go with a whole team, or if you go with an Olympic sport, or not a lesser known sport, but with an Olympic sport. How do you have those conversations with brands, and how do you level their expectations?
Yeah, I want to dive into the level of your expectations, not only just on the brand side, but student athlete and coach side. But to answer that question, I think that's something that it's our job when you sit in the seat to do. Ultimately, we wouldn't have over 5,500 deals and, over 500 brands that have engaged if we didn't have those conversations, because ultimately it's our job to give them an experience that they value and that actually gives them the ROI they're looking for. And maybe they may think that that's a football student athlete, but they may not realize that their target market or their audience would be more well suited for, 6 or 7 dance team members. Right. And so it's our job to educate them and to provide them, market data and analysis that we've gathered and captured and show proof of concept. That's why having such a large portfolio of activations and deals is so valuable at this point, 4 years in, is because we can refer brands to that and say, this brand also thought that they wanted to work with a men's basketball player, and they decided to work with 2 women's volleyball players and a men's lacrosse player. Right. And so I think showing that versatility, and that's what makes Ohio State so special, is the diversity and demographic that we have across so many backgrounds of student athletes and so many different sports. But yeah, managing those expectations from a brand standpoint is important. And once again, that's what we're kind of not graded on, but looked at to see how are we retaining these brands. If we don't give them that education and they have a bad experience, and they don't come back, then that's not a win in the student athlete's book, and it's not a win in our book. So we try to be pretty transparent. Ultimately, we're brand and donor centric, so we're going to do what they want to do, but we're going to make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure they have the full scope of information to make a decision.
So off of that, I want to ask you this question. You can attack it from a brand standpoint or just a general standpoint, but what are the biggest misconceptions that you hear from people when they're trying to work in the NIL space with you or with Ohio State?
I think there's a few. I think misconception, there's probably, I would start with the student athlete side. One, it's that it kind of just falls in your lap, right? I think student athletes just kind of assume that, they see the headlines and they see these opportunities. But it does, the student athletes that have the most success are the student athletes that hustle, and that's hustle with the relationships, that's hustle with activation and, the research that they're doing. So I think that that's a common misconception of it's, something that you just post once and receive money, which you can do that, right? But the authentic deals that are going to last a lifetime and, the connections and brand building, all that stuff is really accumulated over a long duration of time and engagement. I think the other thing is the NIL is just for football and basketball. Ultimately, I think we are a prime example of, our women's volleyball team and our softball team and our dance team here at Ohio State have had tremendous success in the space. And I think that that's a testament once again to who we bring in and recruit and the student athletes we have, but also just the value once again in the marketplace for these different sports and the ability for them to kind of be a vehicle for these brands to tell their story. And I think that that's kind of a misconception. Man, I feel like there's a lot, right? Being in this space for 4.5 years, I always say like there's no experts, but a veteran by tenure. I think there's a lot of misconceptions you could defy, but ultimately I would say those are probably two of the top ones.
No, those are great. These next couple of questions here, I kind of want to pull out and get your perspective from like the 10,000 foot perspective on NIL. What do you see in terms of athlete branding, commercial and commercial activations? How do you see those evolving in the next couple of years? Do you think we're going to get more athletes in commercials? Do you think bigger brands are going to get involved? Where do you kind of see us heading?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see it a little bit behind the curtains, right? You're seeing apparel deals be restructured and renegotiated. I think you're seeing a lot of these large university partners think about their relationship a little bit differently. So I think you're going to see probably a lot more co-branded NIL activation with student athletes with some of these large university partners, just in the way that strategy is kind of unfolding. I think you're going to see potentially more commercial activations. I think you're going to see more in like the royalty passive income space, as that's something that all student athletes can leverage because of the ability, to make revenue that lives outside the institution, which is important in this landscape. So I think you'll see the group licensing space increase. I think once again, that's low hanging fruit for student athletes in all capacity or in all sports to kind of leverage. So, I wish I could predict where it was going to go. If I did, I wouldn't be sitting here, right? I'd be sitting somewhere else if I had a crystal ball and could predict where NIL was going to go. But those are some of my predictions heading into, year 5 and 6 of this.
On the other end of that question, what trends or what de-evolution do you think is going to take place? What do you think, what's part of NIL now that is going to stop in the next 2-3 years or maybe even sooner?
What's going to stop? Man, that's a good question. What's going to stop? I think that's hard because I think everything, once again, there's a benefit for sort of everything that happens for depending on, the student athlete and the person or the brand or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I think we need to see this space evolve a little bit more. I mean, it's going to continue to evolve and change. I don't necessarily know, like as of right now, what's going to stop, right? I mean, there's a lot of our environments. I'm trying to say all this the right way. There's a lot going on, right? So to stop anything in this world right now is kind of tough, right? I mean, to put a halt on something and that's meaning stop being like restricting something from continuing to happen, or it just fizzles out. I think there's a lot of complications when you talk about those types of things, whether it's a collective and right, do those still exist? Do they not? How do they exist? How do they show up? So, really stopping anything in this environment is sort of tough. So it'll be interesting to see how the landscape continues to evolve.
Okay, next couple of questions. We want to focus on you a little bit. What's one thing you can't do your job without? This is your chance to shout out your calendar app, maybe your favorite pen brand.
One thing I couldn't do this job without is my MacBook. No chance. So anybody that knows me knows that I have my book bag wherever I go. Everybody makes fun of me, which is fine, but it's because I always have my computer in my backpack. So everybody knows that I don't go anywhere without my computer. So I couldn't do my job without my MacBook.
I love it. Shout out MacBooks.
That's right. Apple.
What's the most exciting deal that you've seen? Could be one that you've been a part of, or one that you've seen when NIL first started, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, right? I think I'm obviously going to talk about something that we've done, the all Chipotle or all called all Chipotle cards for student athletes last year and this year, and being the first in the country to do that. And with a brand like Chipotle, it's one of the most sought after brands in the country, just with their brand reputation in Ohio State. So it's fun when you have such a large volume of student athletes to facilitate something like that, to where every athlete has an opportunity. And so that's by far one of my favorites.
I love it. You're the second person on the show that's mentioned that deal.
And we did it first, though. Don't forget that. Make sure you put that part in there.
Ben made sure to give you guys your flowers when he mentioned that. Okay, what's your obviously you're well into do with what's going on in Columbus. What's your can't miss spot? If I were to come for 24 hours, where's the spot that you're like, oh, Sterling, you have to hit here?
Man, it's like it's a great spot, but it's expensive, so it's not like a go-to all the time spot. But if I'm taking somebody to dinner, Jeff Ruby's downtown Columbus Steakhouse, incredible spot, great experience. Now once again, I'm not a frequent flyer there, but if I could treat myself, that's the spot.
Hey, we're okay with treating yourself every once in a while.
That's right.
And then lastly, tell us where people can find you.
So find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. I think my Logan, that's me. I think I don't think I know that's me, but those are my platforms. I try to stay engaged, and then I'm physically here in Columbus. So if anybody's in Columbus and wants to connect, happy to do that. So really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully some of this insight is beneficial and helpful to folks that are either in the industry or looking to get in the industry, and appreciate the opportunity.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. And
go Bucks.
Thank you, Logan. Thanks again to Logan Hittle for joining us and telling us about his work at Ohio State. If you'd like to connect with me, Sterling Randle, feel free to do so on LinkedIn. Also, check out nilnewsstand.com for more episodes. You can also find out more about digital sport by Hot Paper Lantern at hpldigitalsport.com. You can also find us and NIL Newsstand on LinkedIn. Hope everyone has a fantastic day, and we'll see you again next time.